All right, when I was in the Marine Corps, of course, it's been a few years back, our mission was very clear: prepare and fight the nation's battles when needed. Our training was exclusively on our military missions. I don't recall any other training that we had other than our primary MOS or maybe a secondary MOS, but never none of this diversity stuff, this woke agenda. I mean, this military is so focused on this woke agenda that it's crowding out the military's main mission, and that's dangerous. It's undermining national security. But now the Biden administration's taking it a step further. They're transforming military and VA facilities into abortion and, in some cases, gender reassignment clinics. Of course, this fits a pattern of the Biden administration presiding over, this is the most pro-abortion administration in our country's history. And the president is pushing all of this leftist agenda ideology. But this begs the question: why is our military focused on killing the unborn instead of defending the nation? And then to you and I, why does it matter? Well, we're going to talk about that. My next guest is fighting this battle on Capitol Hill, Senator Tommy Tuberville. He is fighting back against these policies. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs. He represents the state of Alabama, and he's told the Department of Defense, look, I'm not going along with anything you're doing until you back off of targeting the unborn. Senator Tuberville, welcome to Washington Watch. Good to have you.
Thank you, Tony. Glad to be here.
Now, you have been extremely strong in objecting to this military policy, going to the Senate floor, bringing this up into committee hearings. Tell our viewers and our listeners why you are doing this and what the response has been.
Well, first of all, I'm pro-life. I believe in the sanctity of life. So do a huge majority of the people in the state of Alabama. And that's who I represent. But I got wind being on the Armed Services Committee, Tony, about last summer that our Department of Defense was deciding on their own that they were going to change the abortion policy within our military. Now, that's done over here in Congress. We make rules and laws here in Congress. This is not left up to secretaries or bureaucrats behind the scenes. Now, currently, our current authority for the department limits abortions to cases of rape, incest, or pregnancies that threaten the life of the mother. Now, that's what we've had for years in the military. But this administration and this Department of Defense decided on their own that they're going to change this. So we kept asking for a briefing on this. We couldn't get a briefing. Well, around Thanksgiving, finally, after pushing buttons and saying, listen, something's got to give here, we want a briefing. Well, they gave us a briefing. And it wasn't anything that what the people of Alabama and most of the people of this country believe in terms of what, number one, our military is for national security. We need to stay out of all these woke policies. And number two, we need to make sure that we do what's right for the people in this country, that elect our leaders and not have appointed leaders make all these decisions. So I heard that they were going to start having pretty much abortions on demand for military members. They were going to let their dependents also have abortions. They were going to spend taxpayers' dollars for this transportation of the military person or dependents. That's not what that's not what is in the law in this country as we speak. So they're making up the law themselves. And so I sent a letter to Secretary Austin before Christmas. I said, I hear what you're getting ready to do. If you do this, I'm going to put a hold on all of the civilian nominees that come across the Senate and all the flagship officers. And you're going to have to go through regular order, which would take years to do what we can do here in a matter of hours if they do things right. So I did that. I think it was February the 16th that they went ahead with this new law or new policy that they're going to change the abortion policy in the military. And they changed it to 16th and it went into effect March the 8th. And so I went into the whole business as a U.S. senator, which you can do, and meaning that basically you're going to have to go the long route if you're going to get anybody that comes through nominations of a ranking officer to move up. So they're squirming right now, and they're putting a lot of pressure on me, but I hadn't heard from anybody yet, so we'll see what happens.
Well, Senator, I want to talk about that process, but first I'm going to go back because in this process, you brought forward some information that even I wasn't aware of, honestly, and that was the military. You know, they often, the administration makes these wild claims, and they said that this was a threat to national security by not being able to have women get abortions. Just women still can get abortions, biological women. And I know the left sees things differently, but that's the reality. But you pressed in on that to find out that only 20 abortions are done on average per year. How can that be a threat to national security?
Yeah. Well, first they said national security, Tony, and then they turned around and said, well, and it's also hurting our recruiting. I said, wait a minute. It hadn't hurt it before. And then all of a sudden, this poor woke military that you're building, you're blaming it on a few rules that we want to try to keep the same, and you want to make different rules, and you don't know whether they're going to help or not. But first of all, we have had an abortion rule, as you just said, and we went by those three limits, rape, incest, and harm to the mom. And we had 20 or less over all these years, per year, of all these years. And there was no complaints, anything. Everybody kind of understood what was going on. But these people are 100% for abortion everywhere. And since Roe Wade now, they have looked for every avenue they possibly can to circumvent Roe Wade. And so this is one of them. So we did a third-party study, Tony, that basically said we're going to go from 20 a year to over 4,000 a year. And so they're going to make a huge jump in what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what I want to make very clear. This is not apples to apples saying, well, they can't, in certain states they can't do abortions. This is, as you've pointed out, creating the Department of Defense to become an abortion travel agency where they're going to be sending people all across the country, and they're going to expand tremendously the number of abortions that the Department of Defense would provide for. And as you've pointed out, that's against the law because it is the Congress that determines how the money is spent. They hold the purse strings.
Well, you're exactly right. And in my letter, I just happened to put in there a statement that says, last time I looked, none of y'all in the Department of Defense ran for an office. You weren't elected to Congress to change the rules, the policies, and the laws. That happens over here. And so that's the reason I'm holding them up. They can't do it. And they're saying that they can. We're saying that they can't. And so we're going to see who's going to win out on this. I don't see anybody, beating my door down yet to try to get this changed, but we've got 150 people now that have holes on promotions right now, and it adds a good number each week. So I'm sure I'll start hearing here pretty soon. But again, let Congress do this. Yeah. If it's going to pass, let's go through the right, proper channels. Let's just don't do it on our own. But that's what this administration tries to do anyway.
So, Senator, I want to talk just for a moment so our folks, our viewers, our listeners kind of understand the process. You put a hold on this, meaning they have to go through the regular order, and that eats up a lot of time. So normally if you have unanimous consent, everybody says, yeah, this is fine, and it just kind of goes on through. This makes, and correct me if I'm wrong, but this makes or requires a vote of the body be held on each one of these. Is that correct?
That's correct. What happens now is we'll get a list of from 10 to 300 officers that need promotion, and they've been vetted. They've gone through the proper channels. We'll bring them to basically a armed services meeting, and it will go through the Armed Services Committee and then go to the floor, and it passes by unanimous consent. It's never any problem. But now, the one thing you have as a senator that you can put a halt to anything is if you put a hold on any kind of nomination, they've got to go through regular order for each one. And it takes weeks and weeks to get a nomination, and sometimes months for, say, an ambassador, somebody that's got to go through a regular nomination through the Senate, and there's got to be vetted, that's got to go through the committees. And so if they want to drag this out, I'm willing to drag it out. I hate it that people are going to be held up because of some policy that the Department of Defense thinks that they've got priority over. But good luck. We're going to hold on to this as long as we possibly can to make sure we get some explanation. Not saying it's not going to go through,
right?
But they're going to have a tough time.
So two more questions on this, and I want to get another topic in. You mentioned pressure. Are you getting pressure from Republicans to go along with this? Who's putting pressure on you? And how can our viewers and our listeners help? Because I know they want to support you in what you're doing.
Yeah, being on armed services, I talk to the generals all the time, the combatant commanders from all over the world. And I receive calls from them and asking, is there anything that we can do? Not pressure, just coach, here's our situation. We got these people up. We understand what you're trying to do. We're not pushing you. We just want to know, how can we help? And they've been very good. And again, this all goes back to the Secretary of Defense and the people in the Pentagon of communication and going through proper order, proper channel. And I'm sure in the near future we'll speak if they've got a good explanation. Those holes might come off, but they better have a real good one, because right now, I'm standing up for the American people and the process that we go through and why we're here. And why do we even have a Congress if we're going to let an administration just run roughshod over all the rules and policies that we have in place?
Are your Republican colleagues standing with you?
Oh, yeah. Of course, I've had some of them come to me and ask me, no, tell me what we're doing here. What's your process? Why? And after I get through telling them, I'm sure, hey, I'm with you. And we've got several that have signed on with us. And again, I think we'll even have more, but it's just a tough situation. Yeah. Unfortunately, I hate going through this. I just don't believe that,
You didn't pick it. You were not the one that chose to do this. You are responding to the overreach, the illegal, unconstitutional activity of the Biden administration. Someone has to stand up to it.
Yeah, well, we got a constitution in this country, and this administration continues to want to define that constitution the way they want it, and we're not going to do that. We're going to go in proper order, and we're not going tear our constitution up. We're going to make sure everybody goes by it. I've had people like Dr. Ben Carlson that signed on with us. Yeah. We've got a lot of conservative leaders that believe in this, and so we're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not doing this. I don't care if my name's ever brought up, but I'm fighting for the sanctity of life. And again, this would never have happened had Roe Wade not been kicked back down to the states. This is just another form of fashion of how this administration can bypass
right.
The Constitution and get to a point where they want to get to. And again, I do not believe taxpayer money should be used on abortions, and that's what this is basically turns into the whole definition.
Well, we are grateful for you fighting this fight, but I want to switch to another fight that you are fighting. You recently led 21 Republican colleagues in reintroducing the Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act to preserve Title IX protections for female athletes. Tell us about this bill.
Well, Tony, I coached for 35 years. I was actually a young coach getting in the profession when Title IX started. It's probably the best piece of legislation that's ever come out of this clown show up here. Not many of them ever works, but this one worked. This gave the opportunity to young girls and women to have the same playing field, same opportunities as boys and men, if it was funded by the government. And so over the years, Tony, the increase in interest in women's sports has been phenomenal, and it's been so much of a success. But now, obviously, with these transgender boys that are biological boys that want to be girls, they want to participate against girls, and that ain't gonna happen as long as if I can breathe, I'm gonna fight it. And there's three things: it's not fair, it's not safe,
Right.
and it's dead wrong. And what's going to happen is going to tear down Title IX, which
Right.
again, like it's been the biggest success in my lifetime, giving all these girls the opportunity to learn so many more different things. And look at the leaders we have now, and a lot of them have come from the sports world.
Absolutely.
So I get confused every day when I even think about this. Why would this administration even think about it? Hey, I'm not against transgender. If you want to be transgender, fine. But you're not going to participate against young girls that don't have the biological structure that you have and really have no chance to win. Now, they might be playing for second or third,
Right.
but that's not what this is about.
Right.
It's about fairness.
It's common sense, and this defies both fairness and common sense. Coach, we're out of time. I want to thank you for joining us, and again, I want to thank you for your leadership on Capitol Hill on these important issues.
Thank you, Tony.